This is Aska Tanmeer with Cries of Kashmir. On January 15th and 16, 2025, the global spotlight will focus on Geneva as it hosts the world's first Congress on Enforced Disappearances, a landmark event organized by the Convention Against Enforced Disappearances Initiative. The UN Committee on Enforced Disappearances, the Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances, and the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. This historic event aims to galvanize international efforts to combat one of the most harrowing violations of human rights. However, the conspicuous absence of voices from Jammu and Kashmir, a region plagued by an estimated 8,000 to 10,000 enforced disappearances, raised profound questions about the barriers to representation faced by victims and human rights defenders alike. Prominent human rights organizations in Kashmir, such as the Jammu and Kashmir Coalition of Civil Society and the Association of Parents of Disappeared Persons, have been at the forefront of documenting and advocating against enforced disappearances. Led by Pervez Imroz, a distinguished lawyer and human rights activist, and Parveena Ahangar, a tireless campaigner and founder of the APDP, these organizations have meticulously chronicled the region's grim realities, from unmarked mass graves to systematic impunity for state actors. Despite their pivotal contributions to international human rights discourse, Imroz and Ahangar, like many other Kashmiris advocates, face severe restrictions on their mobility, with their passport confiscated and their voices silenced on global platforms. This systematic suppression extends to institutions. The JKCCS, co-led by Khurram Parvez, has provided robust documentation of the atrocities, including investigation reports on mass graves that have drawn international attention. Parvez's incarceration since November 2021 under India's sweeping counter-terrorism laws highlights the extent to which dissent is criminalized. Similarly, the APDP, under Ahangar's leadership, has represented countless families of the disappeared, organizing monthly protests and ensuring the issue remains in public consciousness. Yet these organizations, once vital conduits for information to the international community, are now effectively barred from participating in forums like the Geneva Congress. The absence of these voices at such a landmark event reveals a troubling paradox. While the Congress seeks to fortify the plight of the disappeared and their families, systematic obstacles imposed by the Indian state prevent those most affected from sharing their narratives. This exclusion not only diminishes the authenticity of the discourse but also highlights the failure of international mechanism to ensure access and representation for the marginalized communities. Their work has enabled and earned global recognition, with Pervez receiving the Martin Ennals Award for the Human Rights Defenders and Hunger being nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Yet their ability to advocate internationally is systematically curtailed. The confiscation of passports, arbitrary detentions, and bureaucratic restrictions serve as tools to suppress accountability and isolate Kashmir from global scrutiny. The history of conflict in Kashmir is deeply rooted in colonial legacies and shaped by post-independence geopolitical rivalries. Following the partition of British India in 1947, Kashmir became a contested territory between India and Pakistan. Between 1947 and 1987, the Kashmiri struggle for self-determination was largely non-violent. In 1988, India escalated its efforts to suppress Kashmiri's right to self-determination through militarization, deploying an estimated 6,67,000 military and paramilitary personnel into the region, approximately one soldier for every 17 civilians, signaling a significant intensification of the conflict. This militarization created fertile grounds for human rights violations, including enforced disappearances, custodial killings, and the establishment of unmarked mass graves. Since the 1990s, enforced disappearances have been a defining feature of the conflict in Jammu and Kashmir. Over 8,000 individuals, predominantly men between the ages of 18 and 35, have been forcibly disappeared. This practice involves state or state-sponsored actors detaining individuals without due process, often followed by torture, extrajudicial killings, and disposal of bodies in unmarked graves. The International People's Tribunal on Human Rights and Justice in Jammu and Kashmir, uncovered 2,700 graves containing over 2,943 bodies in just three districts: Bandipura, Baramulla, and Kupwara. Many graves held multiple bodies, with 154 containing two bodies and 23 containing more than two. Testimonies from survivors and witnesses highlighting the brutality underlying these disappearances. Corpses were often delivered under the cover of the night, bearing signs of torture and burns. Local grave diggers, coerced into burying the bodies, described the dehumanizing conditions under which these acts were carried out. Despite claims by the Indian state that these bodies belong to foreign militants, local accounts and identification through clothing, distinguishing marks, and exhumation efforts suggest that many of the deceased were Kashmiri civilians. The inaugural Congress, while a significant step towards must not fall short of its purpose. The absence of Kashmiri voices serves as a stark reminder of the challenges inherent in pursuing justice for the disappeared. For the Congress to succeed, it must call for an independent commission to investigate mass graves and disappearances, urge the repeal of oppressive laws such as AFSPA, and uphold the rights of those who speak for the disappeared. True justice demands such decisive and inclusive action.